Well, hi there. This assignment was about developing a website homepage look and feel. And the website was for a coffee roasters, which is different in purpose and niche from something like Starbucks or Peet's or Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. It is basically a craft coffee enterprise. So what we want to do is look at things in terms of the positioning and the appropriateness of the content for the particular business. Uphill Roasters is a fictitious business. It is it's in a metropolitan area, but it caters to cycling and urban hiker enthusiasts. The business differentiation is that it does cater to this specific crowd. So it's not your general business crowd, although that would be perhaps a secondary audience. It's not necessarily a student crowd, although that could be a secondary audience. So it has a different focus in terms of who they're serving. It has a subscription, so it offers its product through subscription services, also foot traffic in the door. What they needed in their site was to facilitate the needs of their clients, their customers. So online ordering, online shop, events, tastings, classes, a menu of their product offerings, and an opt-in for a mailing list. And an overall sitemap would include 5 pages at least for this, but we were only dealing with a home page, a single page to establish the look and feel. And so your process was to go through the inspiration sites for research and anything else you wanted to look at. Make notes on what you learned and what you wanted to include in your own site and why. And you needed to deal with a search bar, photos, which I believe I gave you sources for free photos, a call to action, a footer, and anything else you wanted to include that would be appropriate. Usually if you've researched websites, you know that there's a header. And in the header, you're going to identify who owns the website or what the website is about. So there should be probably a logo or at least a name up here. Putting the name here is okay, but we also need it up here because that's the convention for websites. And the thing is that when we do the research, we really have to drill down into things that are common, things that are conventional. If we are designing particular things, there are certain things that are done in certain ways, and they're always done that way. So if you're designing a letterhead, a printed piece of stationery, generally the identity, the logo, is going to be in the on the left side or the upper left, and that's convention. And sometimes, getting really creative, designers will break convention and put it on the other side or at the bottom. But there is always, for business stationery, there is always a logo or word mark and address and so forth. Those are conventions. With websites, you're going to have a logo and a menu, whether it's this kind of word link type of menu, and these can have drop downs, or it's going to be a little hamburger, which is the 3-line icon that people click, and then the menu drops down from there. But generally speaking, especially on websites, you're going to want something in the top to identify what website you're on, because people don't look at the URL, they're going to be looking at the home page. And then generally, that header, including the logo and the navigation, is going to show up on every page unless it's a specific landing page. Then we want to look at how things are laid out. And so the things that we had to have on the home page were the menu. We've got, this doesn't make sense where we have our here and then story here. I'm assuming it should be our story, so story should be with the word our, so that gap doesn't work. Then the shop is fine. This is okay. It doesn't make sense if they have other events, so maybe there needs to be events up here as well, or maybe this is events and classes, or maybe it's classes, but learn is fine. The menu, and that would mean the various drinks and beverages and so forth that are available. And then connect, of course, would be contact, and maybe a list sign up. The images are really small compared to this very large coffee pot. And since this is a place that caters to urban cyclers, this is probably not the best choice for an icon. This talks about, gourmet coffee, high-end coffee. Is this the right image to have for a place that caters to people who are on the move? We have to look at, is this the right idea for the identity and the positioning of this coffee roaster? The images themselves are small, as I said, and there's nothing really alluding to the idea of urban, the idea of cycling or hiking. This doesn't work. Okay, generally speaking, we're not going to put the URL on the URL. This is sort of circular in terms of argument because we're already here. If we're seeing this page, we're already here, so we don't really need this. If this is a flyer, this is necessary, but you don't need to actually put your whole URL link here because the visitor is already there at that particular web page. This is not necessary information. The sign up for newsletters, this is not actually looking like a link. It's not called out. If you looked at web pages and you've used web pages, the call to action is very clear. And it's usually a button, or it's offset as a link, or it's a click to sign up for our newsletters if it's a verbal link like this. And so this is really not taking the visitor anywhere. It needs to be some sort of button or some sort of clearly understood icon that they would click. What's going on over here and also with Uphill Roasters here is that we can't see this. If you squint your eye, the black against the dark blue, it doesn't separate. And so this type should have been light. It should have been probably the color of the background. The background is a nice kind of off-white. It's a creamy color, which is very appropriate. The whole color scheme, the orange to blue complementary scheme with the gray, has a very kind of sophisticated urban metro quality to it. It kind of has a maybe a Seattle sense or Boston or New York, that kind of quality. But it has a sophistication and an elegance to it, which is really very appropriate. So your color scheme is really working. And I don't know if you're meaning this to be the logo, but if we're talking Uphill Roasters, and given the crowd that this is catering to, better to have something that is more cycling or foot traffic based in terms of what this whole thing would be. It dominates everything, and what we really want to do in terms of a website design is communicate what the space is like, communicate what the experience is like, communicate what the coffee is like. And so there is an attempt in that direction, but it could be fleshed out a lot more. So the takeaways on this are graphic designers have to distill information that they glean from their clients. So they ask a lot of questions, and they have to distill that information into visual communication, a visual language that is going to appeal to the particular audience that they're trying to reach. And that's our job. That's how we serve our clients. With something like this, with coffee roasters, we can't just treat it as if it's a Starbucks or just another urban coffee proprietor. We have to treat it as exactly what it is, because they're trying to differentiate. They're trying to attract a certain clientele who's going to love their coffee and be repeat customers for years, and identify as part of their own personal brands with the brand of Uphill Roasters. You think about Starbucks, they don't sell coffee, they sell the experience, the environment, and the connection. The same thing with Apple. Apple doesn't just sell technology, doesn't just sell computers. It sells a certain identity that we can connect to. With this, definitely coffee-oriented. Uphill Roasters is big. Again, there's no logo, but this is the type clearly knocks out. Could close that gap between Uphill and Roasters because there's enough distance here, and there's nothing else supporting that distance in terms of the leading. So that we're starting to read these as two separate words rather than as one idea. And so especially if this is a word mark that's their logo, then that distance really does need to be closed, because otherwise it breaks up. Typos and typos. This should be EST. That would make it the adjective rather than the noun. A person who's a purist is an IST. If something is pure, then the thing is the noun, and purist is the qualifier of the noun, so that needs to be an E, not an I. This is the contraction of it is. So what you're saying is coffee in it is purist form. Get rid of the apostrophe, make it its, because then it becomes possessive in the same way that his, hers, theirs, ours is possessive. These typos matter. And if you typo for a client like that, even if you're showing them a preliminary piece, it's going to bring down your value in their eyes, because you know, good design is in the details. So always proofread what you send out the door. Online ordering, store, all of these. This is upper and lowercase. Make it all uppercase because everything else is. Why is this lowercase and everything else uppercase? Using the oblique or the ital style of the lettering works to create a sense of speed, which is appropriate for uphill roasters, and you're pulling that from up here. So that is the kind of the typographic identity all the way through. And so that works really well. Probably down here, the thick thin is a little too extreme, and maybe there's a more regular stroked oblique that could be used. Most people now are going to websites on their phones. So we got online ordering, we got coffee, we got local rides and hikes. That's pretty cool, because now you're tying it, you're allowing the client to tie into the community and show that they're really supportive of this community. Local events, different thing. This could be actually uphill events rather than local events. This is kind of a cool idea because it is community-based. This is more specifically, should probably, or the intent of having events and classes is that it's for roasters, the uphill roasters itself. So this could be our events, or this could say events and classes. This is source information, so this is kind of where we get our coffee, and the coffee, you know, the sacks of coffee beans. Tastings, that's another event type of thing, so put a lot of emphasis on that. That's kind of cool. Then we have the interior shot with the bicycles, so it's very obviously caters to the urban cycling athlete and adventurer crowd. Here's your hamburger menu, and so we would click that and see all the drop downs. And then we have the socials here, which is cool. You've got everything laid out in a grid, kind of standard, but it works. It's a 3-column grid, and you've got the full width banner. Banner could probably be shorter vertically, maybe crop the top a little bit, so you get more focus on the coffee going into the mug. But there's a lot of space over here that's not really working, so it could probably crop at the top and just be shorter vertically. This is kind of interesting because using the green here is kind of a nod to Starbucks, perhaps, because they use a green. It kind of speaks to the idea of craft coffee, freshly roasted. They're actually doing the roasting there. Keep in touch. If this is a link and an email, this needs to be fleshed out more. Is this really what you want them to do, or like just to keep in touch? Is that the reason that you want them to sign up, or do you want them to join in and be part of Uphill Roasters? In other words, become part of the uphill community. So the copywriting there could be different. It could be more sign up and become part of a community. And that's kind of the way you want to go, because you're talking about community in terms of how you are positioning and what you're showing, you know, what you're offering. So that should be carried out all the way through. And this should be a distinct email box so people know what to do. So again, in conclusion, as a designer, you have to address the problem. What is the client trying to achieve? What do they want to accomplish? Why are they having the design done? Why are they coming to you, the designer, to create something for them? What is that backstory? What do they need to have happen? And what would be their ideal result. Is it to increase sales? Is it to build community? Is it to build an email list? Is it to promote a cause? What is their thing? Why are they doing this in the first place? And that's the starting point for your design, and everything you do has to speak to that in the way that the client needs the graphic designs to speak. So we have a lot of responsibility. And the better that we do that, the more attractive we become to new clients.